3 spine-chilling winter horrors revealed, terrifying tales of the cursed and haunted night. The air outside shimmered with a sinister chill, settling into the newly moved Sarah's bones like an unwelcome guest. As the sugary scent of cookies wafted through their snug bungalow, the holiday spirit felt warm, yet a creeping darkness loomed, threatening to shatter the warmth she had built for her children, Jamie and Lily. The snow fell silently, covering the neighborhood like a thick, ghostly blanket, and beneath it, secrets lay birthing. It all began with the footprints. They were massive, claw-like prints that zigzagged across her lawn, nearly impossibly large for a child or any local animal. At first, Sarah rationalized them. Perhaps a neighbor's friend had wandered off. But chilling dread replaced that flimsy comfort upon seeing her kids wake in terror, shrieking about shadowy figures with chilling whispers haunting their dreams. "They're out there, Mommy," Jamie would wail, pulling at her sleeve until her heart raced like a trapped animal. Such small innocent faces shouldn't have to bear the weight of something vile lurking outside. Settling into their new life was not how it had begun, but the whispers grew louder, swirling around her mind like the snowstorm outside, thickening the air with unease. She could feel it. Neighbors shying away, guarded glances exchanged. Quietly, she began to hear the hushed conversations about the old man at the end of the block, Mr. Hargrove. Rumors steeped in accusation of witchcraft and dark magic circulated as if they were fallen leaves swept along by the frigid wind. Only there was something beyond bizarre. Those eyes that seemed to follow her, as if probing through the layers of innocence she had yet to shield her children from, before they could settle into the apparent festivity of winter's embrace. Sarah returned home from picking the kids up from school to find an unnatural silence hanging over their street. The houses, usually warm and inviting, felt cold and threatening. She opened the door, and her heart plummeted at what she saw: a crumpled note pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a gingerbread man. It was scrawled in crude crayon, "We're outside. Don't let them take you too." Her gut twisted, terror constricted her chest and gripped her throat with a steel vice. "Jamie. Lily." Sarah called, fear rippling through her voice, losing warmth to the growing winter chill. The wind howled, as if mocking her cries. Her footsteps echoed through the house, and panic swept through her body. Where were they? She rushed outside into the abyss of swirling snow, shame and guilt gnawing deeper with each chilling whisper that brushed against her skin. Empty houses stared coldly back at her, their residents gone dark, shadows hiding behind drawn curtains. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With desperation clawing at her mind, she raced through the snow, the wind biting at her cheeks, swallowed by the dread tightening around her heart. Every shadow morphed into something monstrous, gliding behind her as she sprinted. The laughter of her children felt like a distant dream. They were just beyond her reach in a world now alien and unyielding. Time dissolved into chaos as her instincts sliced through the silence. Mr. Hargrove's house loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the flurry, standing as a grotesque sanctuary. Trembling, Sarah reached the door, her knuckles raw as she knocked fervently. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dim interior filled with the weight of forgotten photographs and an eerie cold that sent chills down her spine. As the candle flickered, illuminating the crooked faces staring back at her from the walls, she felt for the first time the suffocating truth: monsters don't always hide in the shadows, sometimes they live just next door. Would she uncover the chilling reality before it consumed everything she held dear? The air thickened with suspense, her children's laughter now a haunting echo that fled into the night. The question remained: who would survive when the snow melted? The door creaked open to reveal Mr. Hargrove, his pale skin seeming almost translucent against the dying light. His eyes, those piercing orbs that once filled Sarah with dread, now glinted with an unnerving curiosity. "You're here for your children," he rasped, his voice like the crunch of ice underfoot. Sarah's heart thudded painfully in her chest, the words both a statement and an accusation. "Where are they?" she demanded, stepping into the frigid darkness of his home. The stale air wrapped around her like a shroud. Shadows in the corners appeared to flicker to life, and she could swear they whispered her name, their tones a twisted melody of sorrow and hunger. "Safe for now," he said with a faint smile. But that smile was more dangerous than it seemed. Panic surged through Sarah, anger mixing with disbelief. Every ounce of instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she was tethered by the invisible ties of her motherhood, propelling her deeper into his lair. "What do you want?" she suddenly barked, forcing herself to hold his gaze. The shadows danced, swirling like miniature storms, mesmerizing and horrifying. "Want?" His laughter reverberated through the cold space around her. "I want what everyone wants, life, but not in the way you think. I save children, preserve them in a way that the world outside cannot." He stepped back, gesturing to the cluttered walls. The photographs varied in subject, from cheery birthday parties to haunted gazes that promised secrets buried deep. Sarah hesitated, dread clawing at her throat. "What did you do to Jamie and Lily?" "Not what you think," he replied sharply, his tone dropping to a whisper. "They're beyond your understanding now." A sinister grin split his face wider. "You should be thankful. They are mine to protect." Deep inside, Sarah heard a faint giggle, a familiar sound that twisted her gut. "Jamie? Lily?" she called, her voice trembling. The whispers intensified, testing her sanity, taunting her resolve. She felt the air thicken, pushing against her chest, thick with secrets and something darker. "Do you want to see them?" Hargrove's eyes flickered, keen interest glimmering. Before she could answer, he turned, moving to a door at the back of the room that loomed like a gateway to a nightmare. Each step he took resonated like distant thunder. Sarah's heart pounded in her ears, an internal warning bell. What if he was leading her to her children, or what if it was something far more sinister? Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but what mother would abandon their children to the unknown? It was then that the walls themselves seemed to vibrate with rising dread. She stepped forward, past the threshold of the grotesque room where Hargrove beckoned, her feet carrying her as if possessed. Behind him, through the crack of the door, she saw it an unfathomable darkness, pulsating like a living thing, and behind it two small figures, barely visible between the swirling shadows. "Mommy." A voice, achingly familiar. Jamie's frightened whisper shattered her heart, a shattering she couldn't navigate. "Help us." But as she lunged forward, frozen fingers gripped her wrist, dragging her back into the icy domain. "You have to understand, they're not the same anymore. You can't save them as they were." Rage blinded her momentarily. "Let them go," she roared, fighting against the hold he had on her. Time slowed as the darkness rippled behind Hargrove, agitating the air with a menacing warmth that chilled her to the bone, but he only laughed, a sound reminiscent of cracking ice. "You don't even know what they truly are now. Only the chosen can survive under winter's curse." In a breathless moment, as shadows clung to her skin, Sarah realized the true horror wouldn't just take her children, it would take everything she had ever loved. And the worst part, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. A low rumble issued from the heart of the darkness, pulling her thoughts into a spiral of despair. She felt the edges of her sanity fray, an unsettling truth clawing its way into her mind. In this winter of horrors, she might become part of the darkness herself. "Will you join them?" he asked, that grin never fading, casting the shadows deeper. The door slammed shut behind her as screams echoed the laughter, the horror, merging into a single haunting sound. Was she too late? And just as that question seeped into her thoughts, the ground beneath her trembled like a living thing, sending icy roots through her feet. She was at the center of something horrific, something awakening. In the echoing blackness, the tug of her children's cries now began to twist into sinister laughter. And that laughter made her blood run cold, hinting at the unthinkable. What opened next would change everything. What awaited her inside that gaping abyss. The darkness swallowed her whole as the door slammed shut, sealing her in with Mr. Hargrove. The icy air wrapped tighter around her, making it hard to breathe. Every instinct screamed for her to run, yet her feet felt rooted to the ground as if the darkness itself had claimed her. Hargrove stepped closer, the shadows swirling around him like a fog, obscuring his full form. "You're drawn to them, aren't you? The ones you think you can save?" His voice dripped with malice, a sinister echo that made her shudder. "But they belong to this world now, not yours. Let them go," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. Each word echoed back to her, swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. The faint laughter of children twisted in her ears, but it was not the sweet sound of joy she remembered, it was sharper, mocking. "Do you not trust me?" he said with a tilt of his head, as if genuinely interested in her response. "I offer salvation, Sarah." He extended his hand toward the door behind him. "Come see what I've created." Against her better judgment, curiosity lured her closer. She inched forward, drawn by the sound of Jamie's voice again. It grew louder, tinged with fear, and yet something else, a strange, seductive sweetness calling her to the dark threshold. "Mommy." The voice was clearer now, but it was accompanied by another, a more sinister murmur she couldn't decipher. It chilled her bones. "Stop. Don't." She felt her heart race, a wild drum echoing in her ears as Hargrove stepped aside, revealing the door ajar. A sliver of light gave way to an abyss beyond, a swirling mass that flickered like a dying flame. "Come see," he coaxed, each word slow and deliberate. "They are waiting for you. The chosen will rise." "What have you done to them?" Sarah knew she had to focus, had to resist the pull of those haunting calls. Yet, she stepped closer, her body moving almost without her consent. "There is power in what you fear, in what you think you've lost. They are safe, but they must be claimed." His voice dropped, a whisper now, "Would you sacrifice yourself to save them?" The thought sent a wave of bile to her throat. "You're a monster." She spat, but it sounded weak against the murmurs that fanned out from the shadows. "Monster?" Hargrove laughed, and the sound sliced through her, cold and sharp. "You have no idea what true monstrosity is. Look." He gestured dramatically towards the darkness. "Look and learn." Compelled yet terrified, she peered through the opening. What she saw was a landscape draped in shadows, children playing, but their faces wore unnaturally wide grins, eyes reflecting the hollow hope of a forgotten realm. They twisted and turned, a dance of light and dark, and in the center, Jamie and Lily stood, their small forms increasingly indistinguishable from their surroundings. "Join us." Jamie's voice sounded, echoing the laughter. But even in its urgency, it held a hint of something more, a call to the abyss, a surrender to the darkness. "No!" Sarah cried, clutching her head, battling the anguish that threatened to pull her under. She needed to refocus, to remember the warmth of their love, the safety of their bond. The connection that anchored her in the world of light. "Stay or go, it matters little now." Hargrove's voice dripped with honeyed temptation. "You cannot save them. They will need someone to guide them, and if not you, then who?" The walls around her pulsed as if alive, resonating with a heartbeat that mirrored her own. The shadows grew thicker, creeping closer. The familiar giggle grew louder, swirling through her mind, promising comfort and warmth, but it was a lie. It was a mirage hiding a gruesome truth beneath. Suddenly, in the depths of that unholy darkness, she saw a figure, something with elongated limbs and spectral teeth, lurking behind her children. Her breath caught, cold terror rushing through her veins. "No, not like this. I won't let you take them." With a surge of panic, Sarah turned to Hargrove, but his eyes shone with a sickening delight that made her blood boil. "The choice is yours, dear Sarah." Behind her, the Laughter morphed, a monstrous crescendo that twisted into a cacophony of despair. Was it truly too late for her to reach them, or would she fall prey to the shadows herself? As the darkness beckoned her to join its ranks, a chilling realization crystallized in her mind: she might not be the only one who would perish tonight. A thunderous rumble echoed outside, a storm brewing, a precursor to chaos. What awaited her in those depths, and would she be able to fight back the encroaching shadows before it consumed everything she held dear? The cold pressed tighter around Sarah, each breath a struggle against the petrifying chill. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest like a drum calling her to battle, but against whom? She only knew one thing: she could not let Hargrove win. Not now. Not when her children depended on her. Let them go. She shouted again, voice cracking. Her words echoed through the suffocating space, but the laughter only grew louder, reverberating like metal against metal. Jamie S. and Lily S. figures danced grotesquely in the distance, their joy marred by unnatural twisted smiles. They were far too close to the brink of the shadows. Hargrove's form shifted, darkening with malevolence. "You don't really think you can resist, do you?" he purred, offering that repulsive, inviting smile again, the kind that sent shivers crawling down her spine. "You're already losing." He slowly closed the distance, his movements fluid, like smoke curling in on itself. Just beyond the door, a more chaotic laughter spilled forth, a chilling tapestry, woven with cries of anguish and desperate pleas. With every infectious giggle, an unseen force gnawed at her resolve, urging her to step closer, to let the shadows embrace her. It was dark magic, and she could feel its weight heavy on her shoulders. "No, I want tea." Her voice came out as a whisper, trembling with fear but coated in determination. She stepped backward, away from the door, until she hit the cold, barren wall. The shadows clawed at her mind, reaching, grasping. Hargrove laughed again, a sound full of icy amusement. "You think you are the hero, dear Sarah? But every time you resist, you push them further from your grasp." He gestured toward the dark realm beyond the door. "Join their world. They offer a warmth you cannot imagine." "Shut up." She spat, fighting against the despair creeping in. She needed to focus, had to find a way out. "They're not yours." "Ah, but they would be," he countered, that sickening delight still dancing in his eyes. "And they would never want to leave. Look at them, so happy here." She refused to look. Instead, she turned her head, focusing on the wall beside her, the rough texture biting into her palm. She dug her nails in, grounding herself against the threat of slipping away into the abyss. "Mommy. Please." Jamie's voice, sweet and desperate, cut through the laughter like a blade. But beneath it, Sarah could hear the scratching, the grating sound of something monstrous stirring. Suddenly, from the depths of darkness, more figures emerged, dozens of children, their skin drawn tight, their eyes wide and vacant. They were shifting closer, an ever-consuming tide of despair. It was as if the shadows were feeding off their joy, leaving only hollow shells, tortured by the unfulfilled longings of their childhoods. "No, no." Sarah whispered frantically, panic overtaking her. She couldn't let them drown in this madness. "I need to save you." But where to begin? Could she fight off the tide of shadows that slipped through the cracks? "Come, join them," Hargrove taunted, his voice barely more than a whisper, a silky thread weaving itself into her mind. "You want this. I can sense it." She wrestled with her thoughts. What if he was right? The darkness, it beckoned to her with promises of power, of connection. It felt like a hug she'd been missing since her children had been taken. For a fleeting moment, doubt slipped into her mind, twisting her heart. "I will not abandon them," she screamed, shaking her head violently, trying to dispel any hint of surrender. But as she did, the giggles continued, each one sharper, more piercing. The air thick with dread as the darkness seemed to pulse around her. In that moment of defiance, something shifted. A tremor shook the walls, and Hargrove's expression faltered. But the shadows responded, dark tendrils reaching out like grasping fingers, tightening around her legs. Was he losing control? What have you done? He hissed, anger flickering in his gaze. Still, the laughter continued, peeling back like paint to reveal the horror beneath. Just as she began to feel the tide turning, a deafening crack sounded. A fissure tore through the floor, spilling forth a blinding light from the depths of the void. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice rang out, filled with panic. Desperation clawed at Sarah's heart, urging her to act before the last light faded, before the shadows pulled him back. But would she be able to save them, or would that light swallow her whole? The darkness was closing in fast, and Sarah was running out of time. The blinding light erupted like a harbinger of hope, but for Sarah, it felt more like a wolf among sheep. As the fissure widened, a part of her dared to believe it could be the salvation she sought. Yet, the chill deepened as the shadow tendrils grew more violent, lashing against her legs, pulling, tugging, urging her toward the darkness. "Mommy, help!" Jamie cried again, his voice rising like smoke, thin and desperate. The laughter of the gluttonous shadows roared, drowning him out, drowning everything out. It sent thick waves of dread crashing into her heart. "No! I want to let you go!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline sparking through her veins. She thrust a hand towards the light, fingers trembling with determination. "Let them come to me," Hargrove whispered seductively, his gaze fixed on the fissure. "They belong here now, Sarah. Can't you see? They've chosen me over you." His grin twisted with grim delight as if drinking in her despair. The light pulsated, beckoning wildly. Hope battled dread within her, a ferocious duel. As the shadows pressed ever tighter, squeezing the breath from her lungs, she felt something shift. It was just a flicker, a memory of her children. Their laughter, the light in their eyes when she recited silly stories at bedtime. A sharp crack echoed in the air as a jagged stone broke away from the floor, colliding with Hargrove's side. He staggered for a moment, surprise momentarily warping his wicked features. "Fool!" he roared, eyes narrowing in rage. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if unsure. Gritting her teeth, Sarah didn't let up. "You'll never have my kids." She leapt toward the fissure, towards the light. Just as she did, something shifted. The ground beneath her feet shuddered violently, as if the fabric of existence teetered on the brink. From the depths of that blinding light, she caught sight of fleeting forms, her children. Their faces flickered with urgency and fear, reaching out to her. "Mommy! Help us, please!" they begged in chorus. Terror coiled in her chest. She stumbled forward, yanking against the shadows wrapping around her like a serpent. It was now or never. The darkness was trying to swallow her whole, wrapping tendrils around her, dragging her into its cold embrace. With a primal scream, she pushed forward, allowing the light to flood her senses. It burned away doubt. She could feel the warmth saturating her skin, breaking through the shadows. As she plunged into the fissure, the laughter turned to screams of anger, clawing at her resolve, the shadows howling against their own loss. "Sarah, no!" Hargrove thundered, but she didn't look back. She was seizing the light, gripping it tightly as if it were a lifeline. The shadows lashed wildly, their panicked cries becoming distant echoes, fading against the brilliance. The warmth wrapped around her as she stepped into the abyss. But just as quickly, a heavy weight pressed against her shoulders, dragging her down, as if the shadows were fighting back, trying to pull her away from her children and towards Hargrove's darkness. "No! Please!" she shouted, but the shadows snaked into her ears, whispering secrets of despair and submission, wrapped in sweet lies. They slithered past her defenses, tempting her with visions the family they could be, free from pain. Her resolve trembled against their assault, every ounce of strength she had built crumbling before their force. As dread and hope battled within her, she felt the tug of the void and the pull of her children's voices. For a heart-stopping moment, the two forces collided, blurring the lines of reality. Would she save them or be consumed by the very darkness she fought so hard against? The air crackled with tension as she hung in the balance, light and shadow intertwined. Would the shadows claim her? Or could she wrest the whip of darkness from Hargrove's hand and bring her children back from the brink? In a heartbeat, she realized she was no longer alone. Something hairy brushed against her leg. A breath, a presence she did not recognize, but was it a friend, or just another tendril of despair? Sarah's heart pounded. The light flickered, and her decisions hung perilously close to unraveling. Which way would it lead? The darkness was unyielding, and time was running out. The pressure around Sarah intensified, the shadows twisting and curling like living snakes. They wrapped tighter, sapping her strength, pushing her to the very edge of despair. She gasped, struggling for breath. In her peripheral vision, the blinding light winked like a distant star, fading, flickering, becoming just a memory, a dream slipping away. "Mommy. Please, take my hand." Jamie's voice tore through the chaos, a knife slicing through thick fog. The thought of losing him sent a cold shiver racing down her spine, anchoring her to what mattered most. "Jamie!" She cried out, desperation flooding her words. She clawed at the darkness, adrenaline coursing through her. But for every inch she gained, the shadows pulled her back. Everything felt wrong, like a twisted game of tug-of-war. Hargrove's laughter echoed in her ears, a chilling symphony that cemented her fear. "Do you hear them?" he taunted, his voice syrupy sweet, wrapping around her heart like a noose. "They're already mine. I can give them what you can't: freedom from pain, from hurt. Let them come to me, let it happen." "I refuse!" she screamed, pulling against the shadows with every ounce of willpower. The warmth of the light filled her bones, and in that instant, she felt a flicker of hope. Then, the presence at her leg brushed against her again, a warm, heavy weight laced with familiar comfort. It had to be her guardian, the force she had felt back in her home, before this nightmare began. But was it enough? A wild howl filled the air as another shadow lunged from the depths, reaching for her as she fought back. The icy tendrils snaked toward her children. "No! Not my kids!" Sarah shouted, a fire igniting within her. With fierce determination, she let the light in her heart expand. The shadows hissed like a swarm of angry wasps, recoiling from her fierce resolve. She felt the warmth envelop her once more, pushing back against the violent chill. The air crackled with raw energy as she surged forward, willing herself into the light. "This is for you!" Sarah shouted, reaching toward her children, the warmth of the fissure pulling her in like a magnet. She lunged, arm outstretched, but just as quickly, Hargrove's shadowed hands shot out, grabbing her wrist tightly, his grip unforgiving. "Stop!" he roared, twisting her arm painfully. "You're mine now, and so are they." The crack was deafening, echoing through her mind as reality split in two. Sarah felt the rip between hope and despair, the remnant of her sanity teetering dangerously on the edge. As the shadow shrieked, she dug her nails into the shifting ground, desperately pushing against Hargrove's grip. Then a flash, a glimmer of silver shot past her, a large dog with bright eyes, pulling her toward the warmth. It was Tommy, their old German shepherd. The mere sight of him reignited the fire within her. Clenching her jaw, she freed her other hand, coiling her fingers around Jamie and Emily's, holding on to the warmth of their love. "Tommy! Help us!" she yelled, her voice raw and hopeful. The dog growled deeply, charging at Hargrove, snapping his jaws dangerously close. "Get off!" The darkness writhed, pulling at Tommy, who was now fiercely protecting them. And in that pivotal moment, time slowed, the air thick with dread and hope. Sarah felt the ground shift again, a tremor beneath her feet. The shadows, realizing they were losing their grip, pulsated with rage. "Mommy, please!" Jamie cried again, desperate tears streaming down his face. "Hold on to me. Hold tight!" Sarah shouted, tightening her grip as she focused on the light beckoning her children. Then, with a sudden spark of defiance, she shouted, "I am stronger than you." The brightness roared back, pushing out the shadows. The force propelled through her, tearing through the darkness around Hargrove. But just as the shadows began to recede, an ear-splitting scream erupted from the fissure, startling everyone. "Get back!" Hargrove shouted, choking on his fear. Sarah looked down, realizing that the ground was opening wide again, the darkness swirling more violently than before. Something was happening. Something that would change everything. What was emerging from the fissure? Was there truly salvation waiting, or would it unleash a terror beyond comprehension? The ground quaked, rumbling ominously as the fissure widened. A cacophony of anguished cries blended with the shrieks of the shadows, each sound twisting Sarah's stomach tighter. She felt as if the earth itself were alive, writhing beneath her like a creature wounded and furious. "Stay close to me," she yelled, her voice slicing through the chaos. Jamie and Emily clung to her as if she were their only lifeline. Tommy stood protectively in front, growling, his fur bristling against the pulsating darkness. The shadows pulled back, momentarily defeated, but the screeching from the fissure increased an all-consuming howl, one that spoke of darkness and despair. Was that her name it called? Was it Hargrove's taunts morphing into something more? "What's happening?" Jamie whimpered, his small frame shaking. I don't know," Sarah stammered, her heart racing. "But we can't let it take us suddenly." From the widening crack, long, bony fingers reached out, grasping the air hungrily while a low, guttural voice echoed, "Come, my children. Embrace the darkness." The shadows around her reacted violently, twisting like a living thing, and for a moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of a form emerging, a figure enveloped in swirling mist, its eyes glowing like dying embers. "No!" Hargrove's voice roared, his facade cracking as he staggered backward. "You're not ready. Not until I say." But it was too late. The entity pulled itself free with a sickening, fluid motion as if the ground were releasing it. The creature seemed to pulse with darkness, its shape amorphous yet horrifyingly familiar. It swirled, coalescing into something that bore Sarah's face. She felt bile rise in her throat when the echo of her own voice slipped from the creature's lips. "Why fight, Sarah? Let go." "Mom?" Emily whimpered, her small hands trembling. "No. You're not my mother." Sarah threw back, her voice hot with defiance, but she felt uncertainty creeping in, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. The thing smirked, a sickening imitation of her smile, and stretched its arms wide, beckoning them closer. Just then, the shadows surged around Tommy, ripping at him. He yelped, fighting valiantly, his teeth snapping out at the gnashing darkness. "Tommy!" Sarah cried, fear sharpening her senses. "Leave him alone!" Jamie shouted, his young voice rising against the darkness. In a moment of courage, he broke free of Sarah's grip and charged towards the creature. "Jamie!" Everything slowed to a crawl as she reached out, desperation fueling her. The darkness swirled with renewed ferocity, reaching for Jamie. Time hung thick and heavy. She screamed, "Come back!" But Jamie stood frozen, caught in fear and fascination. The shadows engulfed him, pulling him toward the creature. It opened its arms wide, and for a horrifying second, Sarah thought she saw a familiar glimmer in Jamie's frightened eyes, a question hanging there, begging for a grip on hope. "Help me, Mommy, I don't want to go." "You want tea?" "I'm coming." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah surged forward, breaking through the encroaching darkness. Hargrove's laughter morphed into anguished wails mingling with her own cries. The shadows writhed, spitting out rage, but she felt the light in her heart flare up again, fueled by love and fury. But would they face the creature with life or succumb to its ghastly embrace? The ground buckled below her feet, and she fell to her knees, grappling with the earth. The fissure gaped wide, like a ravenous maw waiting for its next meal. As she struggled to pull Jamie back, something cold brushed against her skin, sending a wave of terror crashing through her. The world spun wildly, shadows creeping closer, and her guardian's presence faltering. Then, finally, she saw it clear as day, a fleeting shadow against the glow, a glint of silver she recognized. Hope flickered, igniting something inside her. It was there, just out of reach. Would she grasp it in time, or would the horrors of the abyss swallow them whole? Sarah locked eyes with the creature, the mimic of her face twisting into a malicious grin. "Join me, Sarah. Your family will never be free unless you let go of this false hope." The last word lingered, heavy and poisonous, as a sudden scream exploded from the depths of the fissure. What terror awaited them in the dark? What price would they pay to escape? The ground trembled beneath her, shaking with the desperate hunger of the looming darkness. Sarah's heart raced like a trapped animal, each beat pounding in her ears as fierce shadows clawed at the air around her. The glint of silver she had seen, the pendant that hung from her neck, gleamed ominously, its light fading against the onslaught of fear. "Jamie!" she shouted again, her voice cracking like ice. He seemed lost in the creature's gaze, his body swaying between fear and a strange allure. The creature, a grotesque reflection of her own likeness, now grinned wider, the shadows swirling around it like a storm. The fissure released another ghastly moan. The sounds echoed deep within Sarah, a chilling reminder of everything she feared. She struggled to her feet, muscles trembling, every instinct screaming to flee. "Don't listen to it!" Tommy barked, his voice laced with urgency, as he lunged toward Jamie, snapping his teeth at the darkness. "It's a trick!" Emily cried, tears pooling in her frightened eyes. "Jamie, come back!" But Jamie, his small form nearly swallowed by the shadows, hesitated. "But Mommy, it feels safe," he whispered, his voice trembling with confusion. A twisted ache settled in Sarah's chest. Had she failed them? The memory of Jamie's laughter felt distant, like a wisp of smoke trailing away from a dying fire. "No!" she shouted, pushing against the oppressive weight of despair. "You have to fight it." With every ounce of strength she could muster, Sarah lunged forward, reaching for her son. "I love you, Jamie. You're stronger than this." In an instant, the dark figure mimicking her began to dissolve, shifting into a panorama of horrifying images, every past guilt, every moment of doubt she had ever experienced. Faces from her childhood appeared, twisting with despair, all those she never saved haunting her every step. "I'm sorry." Her own voice echoed back, layered and distorted with mockery. She felt as if the walls of reality were closing in, the fissure at her feet threatening to eat her whole. Clawed hands from the shadows grasped at her ankles, dragging her towards the gaping maw. Each breath came harder, the darkness screamed louder. The presence of the nightmare loomed, demanding she submit. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice shuddered through the chaos, piercing like a breath of fresh air. "I don't want to be like that. I want to be with you." "Yes!" Sarah cried, eyes wide, fueled by desperate hope. "We can fight this, together." In a rush of energy, she gripped the pendant against her chest, its shimmer erupting with brilliant light. It sent vibrations rippling through the shadows, cutting into their sinister embrace and revealing a path to Jamie. But just as suddenly, the darkness surged back, violent and unrelenting. The creature's voice snaked into her consciousness. "You are nothing without your darkness, Sarah. It is your truth." She stumbled back, grappling with panic. Tommy howled, desperate to break through, but the shadows wrapped tighter around him, weakening the strength of her protector. "Stay with me." Sarah gasped, trying to pull Jamie free from the tendrils of nightmare, but the very ground beneath her cracked, threatening to pull them all into the void. "Embrace it," the mocking voice called softly, its murmurs weaving through her thoughts like poison. "It's your only escape." Then, she saw it, a flicker of daylight piercing through the shadows, the glint of hope illuminating the faces of her children. Could she tether herself to that light? As Jamie's eyes locked onto hers, she felt a wavering resolve swell within her. Was it hope, or just denial? Jamie. Emily. Hold on. The piercing screams erupted again, and again, the earth quaked with fury. Would they survive the pull of the darkness? Would their bond withstand the abyss? The fissure trembled, and Sarah felt the breath of something ancient and malevolent hovering just beyond reach. What awaited them behind that threshold? Would they find salvation, or become one with the shadows? The fissure trembled violently, pulling at the edges of reality. Sarah's heart raced as she clutched the pendant, the only source of warmth against the encroaching chill. "Jamie, don't let go," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadows hissed around them, a cacophony of whispers that mixed with Emily's sobs. "Mommy." Emily's frightened voice broke through the blackness, tiny and fragile. "I can't see you. Hold on to my voice." Sarah shouted, her words barely piercing the fog of despair. The closer they got to the darkness, the more it pulled them in, a malignant force tempting them to abandon hope. In the depths of the shadows, Sarah caught glimpses of twisted figures writhing in pain, faces that echoed her regrets, each a ghost of her past. The illusion twisted more grotesquely with every beat of her heart, each pulse thrumming with a sinister rhythm. "Help us!" Jamie cried, his little body trembling. Each heartbeat was a countdown against the malevolence creeping closer. As she steadied herself, Sarah tried to peel away the layers of dread. She needed to protect them. The ground cracked again, splintering beneath their feet. "Keep your eyes on the light. Follow my voice," she urged, willing her children to cling to her. Clouds of shadow slipped beneath their feet, hungry for their flesh, gnashing like teeth. Tommy's growl erupted from the swirling shadows, a protective instinct clawing through the darkness. "Stay close, kids," he barked, his form gradually losing the battle against the creeping void. His figure flickered, distortion reflecting the struggle within. The creature's laughter echoed, chilling and rich, reverberating off the jagged rocks. "You can't shield them, Sarah. They belong to me. Embrace the darkness, it will save you from your endless guilt." "No!" Sarah screamed, fists clenched around the pendant as it vibrated with shared grief. She could feel Jamie's fear resonating through her, almost tangible. "You won't take them. They are not yours." Suddenly, a gust of freezing wind swept through the fissure, carrying rancid whispers. The shadows recoiled, swirling like agitated serpents. Sarah seized the moment, drawing on every ounce of determination she had left. "Emily! Jamie! Hold hands," she shouted, blocking out the taunting voices drifting from the void. She reached her hand toward Jamie, who grasped it tightly. Emily grabbed his other hand, fear laced through their fingers. The darkness howled, furious and relentless, as they formed a circle. As their bond strengthened, the shadows clawed at the edges of the light, growing agitated and frantic. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice was strained, a sound filled with agony. In that fraction of a second, Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of their hands, their fear melding into her own. She concentrated on the light, on the love that shone brighter than any shadow. "We are stronger together. Don't give in." But the darkness surged back, slamming against the light they formed. She felt the pull, an insidious whisper luring her to doubt. "Let go and find peace." Suddenly, the pendant flickered again, pulsing with energy. It burned against her chest, igniting a surge of truth. "This is our last chance. We can use it." Before she could think, she thrust the pendant towards the darkness. A beam of light shot out, tearing through the crushing horror. It illuminated the face of the creature, revealing its hollow eyes filled with anguish. Then everything stopped. The howling ceased, and an unnatural silence blanketed the chaos. Sarah opened her eyes, half terrified, half hopeful. Had they awakened in a new reality? Or had they simply angered whatever lurked within the shadows? As the light flickered, a strange voice whispered from beyond the fissure. This is just the beginning, Sarah. You will pay for this defiance. The air thickened with dread, and suddenly, the ground beneath them heaved violently again. The fissure widened, dark tendrils reaching out, grasping desperately for their consumed souls. Would the light be enough to shatter the impending doom, or would it beckon the darkness forward, deeper into their very hearts? What was the price they would have to pay to escape this nightmare? The shadows writhed around Sarah, coiling tighter like snakes, and she felt the earth tremble beneath her feet. The fissure gaped wider, a ravenous maw that threatened to consume everything she held dear. "Stay close to me," she yelled, fear lacing every word as she drew Jamie and Lily nearer, their small hands gripped tightly in hers. Tommy stood firm, growling at the encroaching darkness, but even he struggled against its relentless pull. "We need to fight it together," Sarah shouted, determination igniting a fire within her chest. "Remember our love, our bond. We are stronger than this." With each moment, the shadows howled louder, a cacophony of regrets and fears swirling around them. The oppressive darkness pressed against her, whispering her insecurities, feeding off her doubt. "You'll never escape," it taunted, a sinister voice echoing all around. It will take what it wants, but Sarah refused to give in. She tightened her grip on the pendant, feeling it pulse with energy, its warmth a beacon in the suffocating cold. "Mommy's here. We're safe," she declared fiercely. Jamie and Lily's frightened faces ignited her resolve, their innocence the purest light in this nightmare. Suddenly, she felt a warmth spread through her, growing stronger, urging her to embrace the light. "In this darkness, we must stand our ground. We fight for our family." With a scream that echoed through the chasms of despair, she thrust the pendant toward the dark tendrils, unleashing a blazing wave of light. It surged forward, slicing through shadows like a knife through fog. The darkness recoiled, hissing in a fit of fury. "No!" Hargrove's twisted form loomed in the background, eyes wide with rage. "You think you can take them from me?" His voice was venomous, laced with desperation as the shadows twisted chaotically around him, sensing their impending defeat. The dark figures shivered, flickering like dying embers, and for a moment, silence hung thick in the air, pregnant with possibility. Then, with a deafening fury, the void howled back, heavier and angrier than before. Shadows lashed out, desperate to reclaim their prey. Sarah felt a surge of panic. Could they truly be free? "Don't let go," she urged, fighting against the shadows as tendrils lashed at her, brushing past her skin like icy fingers. "Together. We have to believe we can win." In that charged moment, her babies turned to her, eyes alight with determination reflecting the very essence of love. Jamie squeezed her hand, as if to say, "I'm not afraid." Emily, too, joined the chorus, a small warrior despite her years. They stood united, like fireflies against the night. Sarah connected with their hearts, embracing their strength. It pulsed through her, a radiant force that no shadow could dim. She focused on their bond, letting the warmth bloom within her chest, fueling the light. "Together, we can break this curse," she shouted, her voice echoing against the dark. Every word was a declaration, a promise. With a final burst of defiance, she plunged deeper into the light, leading her children into the heart of that brilliance. The shadows exploded with fury but crumbled away, recoiling from their love and conviction. Hargrove shrieked, the power binding him to the darkness shattered. "No!" he thundered, as the shadows began to fade, replaced by tendrils of light spiraling toward Sarah and the children. Their laughter rang through the air, shimmering like a song, lifting them higher. And with one last push, light enveloped them completely, washing away the bitter chill. Sarah felt the warmth surround her, cradling them like a protective embrace. As they emerged, the darkness retreated, dismantled by the pure strength of their love. The fissure sealed behind them, leaving only a whisper of what once was the shadows, now just a distant memory. Breathless, Sarah turned to her children. "We did it!" She laughed, falling to her knees and gathering them in a tight hug. "We're safe." Jamie and Lily squealed, pulling back to look into her eyes, tears mingling with joy. Tommy dashed around, barking happily, the fierce protector finally at peace. But within her, a lingering echo remained. Had they truly vanquished the darkness? She couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was never really over. Shadows could hide in the corners of the mind, lurking, waiting. For now, however, they were free, and together, they would forge a new path forward. Winter might still whisper of horrors in the night, but in their family, they held an unbreakable light. As snow fell gently outside, blanketing the world in serene silence, Sarah felt hope blossom anew. Laughter filled the little home, and for the first time since their arrival, warmth settled over them like a cozy embrace. Standing tall against the dark would be a lifelong battle, but she would never abandon her family to its whims again. They would face what came next, together, stronger than shadows, stronger than fear, and as the memories of that fateful night faded, she knew that each day from then on would be a victory born from love. Now, as we wrap up this chilling tale, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. It's time to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement keeps us going, and only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.